Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's CPCA Business Board. I'd like to start by welcoming you all to this meeting of the Business Board, and I'm pleased to welcome members of the press public who are able to join via this virtual meeting online. If members experience any technical difficulties during this meeting, I'm sure we're all familiar with the routine by now, but please refresh your connection in the first instance. And as always, if it becomes apparent we've lost members and are no longer quorate, it may be necessary to adjourn this meeting, but hopefully not. It looks like we've got a good turnout. I'm going to move straight to agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. And I'm going to start by calling the names of members of the business board in alphabetical order so that we can record their presence. So I'm going to start with Sam Bakri, and I can see Sam.
Present.
Hi, Sam. Good to see you. Katie Davis.
Afternoon.
Hello, Katie. Emma Garfield.
Afternoon, everybody.
Mike Hurd, who's definitely here. Hi, Mike. Charlotte.
Here. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Charlotte Horobin. Charlotte.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Charlotte. Good to see you. Mayor Dr. Nick Johnson. Not currently here. Let's see if he joins shortly. Tim Jones. Tim.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Araminta Ledger. Minty.
Good afternoon. Just noting that I will need to leave at 15:50. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Minty. Noted. Vice Chair Nitin Patel.
Hello.
Hi, Nitin. Barnaby Perks.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Barnaby. Councillor Anna Smith. I see Anna's there.
Yeah, I'm here. And just to say that I know Mayor Dr. Nick Johnson is planning to come for as much as he can, but I will be here for the full meeting as his deputy.
Thank you, Anna. Appreciate that. Rebecca Stevens. I saw Rebecca pop in, so I know
yes,
Rebecca.
morning.
Hi,
Good
Rebecca.
afternoon, all everyone.
Good to see you. Andy Williams.
I'm here.
Hi, Andy. Good to see you, sir. And last and least, myself, Al Kingsley. So we have a full house with the exception of Dr. Nick, but we have Councillor Anna Smith with us. So we are good to go from a core point of view. And there are no absences flagged or recorded. So agenda item number 2, we are asked to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of May 2024, which I'm sure we can all remember like it was yesterday. Can I ask if any member disagrees with the accuracy of the minutes? Okay, I see no objections, so we'll take that as carried.
Sorry, Chair, can I just jump in for 1 second? That was, apologies, that is an error on your briefing note. We were actually approving the minutes of the meeting held on 8th of July. Still a long time ago, but more recent than May.
Thank you. That's just highlighted my point about how we can remember the dates of our previous meetings. So appreciate that, Alison, but I see no hands, so we will take those as recorded. This is an opportunity to declare pecuniary interests or any other conflicts of interest. Do members have any conflicts they wish to raise? Charlotte, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought it was worthwhile reiterating I'm the project executive for the Local Skills Improvement Plan, as the Chamber is the employer representative body, and I'm very conscious skills features quite heavily in this agenda.
Thank you, Charlotte. I appreciate you flagging that, and I know you will also flag that during any conversation around that topic. Tim, I also see your hand was there.
Yeah, using a real hand. Just to flag, if anything crops up in the conversations about ALIA, I remain their chair, so would have to declare a conflict and duck out of anything that involved them.
Thank you. Okay, we will be mindful of that during our conversations.
Thank you.
Combined authority forward planning, as I try and do at every meeting, just to flag that there is a forward plan that's shared. If anybody, particularly at the end of this meeting, feels there are any other topics we'd like to note and bring forward to future meetings, then we will either raise them as an AOB or you can flag them directly with the appropriate officers. A very brief business board chairs update. Like many of the members of the business board, I know you have been involved in lots of different activities. I think the business board has collectively, I've certainly have been trying to engage in a number of events. We have been doing some recordings ready for the new year, talking about our new investment funds, our growth funds, both for SMEs and also for the third sector, social enterprise. I did recordings last week with the team Ross Renton and AIU, talking about the stages and the progress of our university offer. There's been quite a few visits to different sites, which is really good to see, where we've had investment and seeing those progressed. One I want to flag, last week I was fortunate enough to attend, with the support of the Combined Authority, the Agritech dinner last week. They have a week-long activities, really, really well supported, and lots of innovation being discussed there. So really nice for one of our core sector strategies around Agritech to be able to get involved, and also see the Combined Authority support for that one as well. I have tried to have catch-ups with a few members here, and had catch-ups with the Chamber of Commerce last week as well, which was very, very helpful. And it's good to make sure we're aligned, particularly as you know, we've been talking about broader strategies on how we can support the SME sector. And obviously we know the chambers are flying the flag very much in that area and leading the charge. So some really positive bits and pieces that are on the go, as well as making sure there's regular check-ins that I have with the Mayor, Dr. Nick, alignment on upcoming strategies. There's also been quite a lot of conversations that I'm sure will be on the radar for many post-government announcements, in terms of roles, wearing my business board hat that I have, sitting on the Oxford Cambridgeshire Partner Network, also in terms of what was the network, the business board network as it is now. And there is a review of those different broader pan-regional organisations and where they will feature moving forward. Again, I think the most important thing is to be part of those conversations and try and support where we can in those activities. So there is lots on the go, and there'll be plenty more as we move into the new year, and we will get an update from some of the business board members who've been supporting the thematic committees shortly. I do just want to add, as always, people's careers are progressing. We've got some great people who have careers are moving within the Combined Authority. I believe this is the last meeting where both George Cowell, who has been supporting us on the business board for some time now, and absolutely someone who's been supporting the business board for as long as I've been involved in the business board, Domenico Curlo, is also moving to new roles. So I would just like to extend my thanks, and on behalf of the business board, our collective thanks for your support and your guidance where necessary during your time supporting us, and of course wish you every success in your new roles. So a big genuine thank you to you both for that. Let's move on then to feedback from the thematic committees, and as business board members be aware, we've had some reports that have already been submitted from members, but it's nice to get a quick headlines virtual update at the same time. So the first one is for the Skills and Employment Committee, which is ably supported by Charlotte and Katie. I wonder if one or either of you, or both of you, could provide a quick update on any headline bits from that.
Thank you. I'll be cheeky and I'll give the headlines, and then I'll rely on Katie as a trusty wicket keeper to collect anything that I omit. But this was, although it feels as though Andrea has known many of us for a long time now, it was the official introduction of Andrea coming into post as the Assistant Director for Employment and Skills. And very helpfully, Andrea was also able to provide an update in terms of the formation of Skills England and how a new government being in post, the implications and the opportunities regarding how we bring skills to our region to make sure that our residents and businesses can thrive. We also benefited from a regional economic update from Cambridgeshire County Council, and this provided an update for the whole county. I think some of the things that I would pull out from that would be that we do have an employment rate higher than the UK average. We have seen a decline in vacancies across the region, and that suggests that we do have a contracting economy, and we have seen some declines in those key industry sectors that particularly the Local Skills Improvement Plan and other initiatives keeps a watchful eye on. We also recognise that there are still some quite deep challenges in areas such as Peterborough and Fenland, and that must actually, we must focus our attention on those areas. We also had an update in terms of the annual progress report for the Local Skills Improvement Plan, which was published over the summer months, and some of the ongoing work to bring that piece of work to life, including quarterly labour market analysis webinars and supporting evidence and reports for partners to be able to draw upon thematic events, whether that be outlining what AI means to the big wide world. And Al, thank you very much, because you headed the show up at Ely Cathedral, all the way through to talking about big issues such as ill health, and why we do seem to have a large population who are sadly, unfortunately, not able to rejoin the workforce at the moment. There's also sector focus activities. And of course, this week we do have CAMS B2B, which picks up green and digital very much hand in hand with the Combined Authority. We then progress to discuss work and health. And that's really just the start of the overview of how the joint work and health strategy will play out. But I will pause and just ask Katie whether there's anything that I've missed that was particularly pertinent at that last meeting.
Oh, thank you, Charlotte. I mean, follow that really comprehensive overview. I think it's worth mentioning that, Charlotte's kind of brought a different vibe and a different slant to the Employment and Skills Board, and we left the last Employment and Skills Board with a proposal that actually we start to take a bit of action and form some sort of task and finish groups that pick up some of the key strands that are coming out, because fair enough, that was only my second Employment and Skills Board, but we've kind of been barraged with really interesting stats. And I would say that Cambridgeshire Insights research, if anybody is interested, I think Joe Morley can probably circulate it, but it's incredibly comprehensive, and we have a really complex landscape. Actually, what do we do about that? And how do we start to get the people that are best placed to really start to make some progress on that? So that was a great kind of cliffhanger that we ended on, of calling for volunteers and a bit of a rousing call for action. I suppose the only other things just from the last Employment and Skills Committee rather than Employment and Skills Board, obviously we've got the FE Cold Spots gathering momentum. So we had GT present kind of how they've got on with consultations with providers, and they're looking to formulate what that procurement process is going to look like. And then the really exciting piece of work around kind of the National Supported Employment Scheme, which I think is going to be, incredibly transformational for the region. So loads going on, and beautifully captured by Charlotte.
Fantastic, thank you. That's a really helpful and comprehensive update. It clearly does highlight the fact that with all of our activities, we need to make sure as a business board and combined authority, we've got the broadest possible business voice constantly being a litmus test. And we need to look at ways to make sure we maintain and ideally grow that voice to really refine in on what we're doing. But thank you, it's really helpful, both of you. Next was the Environment and Sustainable Communities group that met not that long ago. And I know Tim and Emma support that on behalf of the business board. Would either of you like to share an update and highlights from that?
Yeah, I can update on this one. So I attended the last meeting, which was towards the end of October. Just some highlights. We talked about the £250,000 grant available for community groups applying for renewable energy. Obviously significant in terms of some of these schemes and projects are quite high price points, so it's enabling sort of that barrier to entry for community groups to be realised. We had a presentation from the Great Ouse Valley Trust, who are aiming for national landscape status, which is a sort of like World Heritage status really, but sort of national status on the granted by Natural England. So the Mayor was particularly supportive of that and offered any help we were able to give. That's a significant area in terms of the region, sort of cutting through the region and recognising and celebrating the biodiversity within that space. We also had a presentation from the National Highways in terms of the new road infrastructure on the A428, trying to ensure that lessons have been learned from the A14 earlier work and the sort of environmental impact of that that construction was taken on board. So we had quite a comprehensive run through from a nature and a sort of disruption and reparation perspective, how the contractors were working to ensure that lessons were learned and from that sort of previous projects and weren't going to be repeated on this 428 work. We then had a little bit of discussion and focus on the need for focus on flood prevention and balancing the sort of water security and flooding, water excess, which had come up in a previous meeting. So the committee are keen to invite Water Resources East for an update at a future meeting to just understand what we can do to help in those two sort of key areas for the region, really. We had a update from Cross Key Homes in terms of how their new construction. There are over 1,000 new homes working under construction or being repurposed for the region. I think just point to note that they all seem to be a little bit behind schedule, but there seem to be plans to sort of try to get that back on track. Local nature recovery scheme, there's a draft strategy which was due to be produced for March 25. There is some further work need to be done. That's about the mapping of the baseline is complete, but now it's about mapping to look what improvements need to be made, and that's significant in terms of the impact of that on future planning applications, in addition to biodiversity net gain. So I'll just look at my notes. Anything else? Just on the climate action plan review, an opportunity fund has been agreed for demonstrated projects that can be replicated or scaled in the area. So those are 50 to 150 thousand pound grants and bids with 10% match funding required. So that's again targeting eligible organisations such as parish council, social enterprise, voluntary organisations, and feeding into the February investment committee. So the environmental and sustainable communities committee will be meeting to review those applications. And I think that was everything. I think Tim attended an induction prior to that. I don't know if there's anything from that, but that was the update from the formal meeting.
Thanks, Emma. I suppose just to add then is I was lucky enough to attend an informal briefing, and that was very helpful, particularly for my understanding, because we dealt with the infrastructure delivery framework and what that is finding and how that relates to the local growth plan. We had an explanation of the single assurance framework, which of course the authority is adopting or has adopted, and how that impacts and works on decision making. And we had a presentation on the climate programme, which included an update on progress against the timetables and the budgets of the various initiatives that are going on, which Emma's touched on. So very helpful in terms of just broadening the understanding of some of the issues going on in the region. That's all from me.
Thank you both. Another really helpful update, and probably, although we've got another update next, just worth signposting at that point. As part of that single assurance framework and as part of that broader governance and oversight and business voice, I think just from those already updates, it just highlights that an increasing part of the role of the business board happens outside of these formal meetings and in our support and providing voice and insights across those thematic committees and beyond. So it's really good to get those detailed summaries from you. So thank you. The Transport and Infrastructure Committee also met, and Rebecca and Andy support us on that group. Are either of you able to provide a similar update for us, please?
I will make a start. So I think since the previous business board meeting, there may have even been 3 transport and infrastructure committees, certainly 2. So I'll start, and there's one area which Rebecca might want to comment on, which I thought was going to be on the agenda today. So it may be more for the Deputy Mayor to make comment on this, but my first comment is it's all about buses. So an awful lot's been going on buses, both in terms of franchising, but also about optimising and expanding the network and incentivising people to use it. So from my perspective, it's one of the places where actually the Combined Authority has been most impressive. The amount of work that's going on, the amount of initiatives, and how it all hangs together has been really important. So we've now got a Tiger scheme, which is for young people, attracted more than 30,000 applicants, which is really impressive. And actually expanding the concessionary bus pass schemes so that older and people unable to travel by other means get to use bus passes all day rather than having to wait till 9:30, I think is really useful and may well encourage people back into the workplace in a way that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. So a lot going on. I might ask Deputy Mayor to give us a bit more on buses, because there's been so much. Let me finish first, and I'll see if Anna wants to add, because I haven't done it justice, because I almost don't think it's possible given the amount that's going on in buses at the moment. Other things that came up in the budget a couple of weeks ago. Next East West Rail non-statutory consultation will starting this week, and the combined authority response will be discussed at the TIC meeting in January. As a not particularly conflict of interest, I am chair of a business, investor and university group, which has very strong views on East West Rail. So if the business board want to express any particular opinion for me to then pass on to the TIC committee, then we need to do that before the TIC meeting in January. Otherwise, I think we're going to be wholeheartedly in support, because it's going to be very difficult for me to split my other hats from my business board hat unless somebody on the business board provides me with a contrary view. If I'm given that contrary view, then we'll have to figure out how to. Maybe Rebecca's better to provide the business board view than me, but we will figure that one out if there is a contrary business board view on East West Rail. But before we come back to that, I put in a small bullet point because I thought it was really cool, but not very cool of Living the Fens, this trial at tackling long-standing problems around maintaining roads that are on the fenland soils. So the roads kind of like do this. If you can't see, that's my hand going up and down. So to me, it's really interesting. I think if you live in the Fens and you're subject to that, it's probably not much fun, because it's stopping them getting around so effectively, and we need a long-term solution for it. So actually, an occasion where something really interesting and scientific came up during a meeting which was about something completely different. So I think we need to be supportive of that. I think it does support the fenland economy, but like I say, from our perspective, quite an interesting technological challenge that some of our members might help with in the future, because I think it's quite interesting. The next one there was another thing that came up in the budget was the establishment of a Cambridge Growth Company. And I thought it'd be worth a wider discussion at Business Board about how the Business Board interacts with the Cambridge Growth Company. But in the short term, that may come out in how we progress the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy, which is obviously owned as part of the wider transport strategy from the CPCA region by the Mayor, but obviously will interface with the Cambridge Delivery Group. And I received strong assurances from Mayor Nick directly in the TIC meeting that there will be a strong link between the CPCA work and that of the Cambridge Delivery Group, but there's something there which we may want to explore from a business board perspective. How do we feed our views in? Maybe it's through TIC, maybe other mechanisms. That's probably still to be discussed and agreed. We finally got to look at the Wisbech to March railway link, which is, we waited a long time and it didn't give us what we want. So eventually the BCR ratio was very poor to abysmal, frankly. And we knew that was based on the fact it was basically a point-to-point connection, and that point-to-point connection doesn't provide sufficient value to justify the cost of the project. Now, there were views in TIC that if you built it, they will come. And I've always been quite in favour of that model, actually. I think that's quite an interesting way of seeing it, that current behaviours are driven by the fact there isn't a railway line. Then if there was one, then that would itself just generate additional economic activity. But we also heard a more visionary, optimistic view, actually, from Councillor Seaton, who started to paint a strategy for Fenland using this railway as its base, which I think could be quite exciting. And as the business board rep there, I said, I think it'll be easier to get behind that exciting vision than to continue to promote a scheme with a low BCR, particularly when it's having to compete with things like the Ely study, corridor study as well. So in terms of prioritisation, very difficult to say why Wisbech to March is a railway link we can support in its current form. But if it were part of a wider regeneration of Fenland, which could be really quite exciting, I think then the business board would be very much look forward to seeing those plans and what the opportunities that gave. And then one final thing that's not here, because I thought it was on the agenda today, was the digital strategy. So the TIC reviewed the digital strategy a couple of meetings ago. And I think it was going to be on, it was on the forward plan to be in this meeting and hasn't actually happened. So I think, I don't know, Rebecca, if you can remember back to the digital strategy? I think we were relatively comfortable with it, but it was good to see the infrastructure is not just transport.
Yes, we did discuss it. It was the meeting before last, and I believe it's the digital connectivity strategy for 2025 to 29, and it's since been approved by Combined Authority Board. In fact, I think we did talk about it as a business board a few months ago when Darren came to talk to us about it. I can't remember whether that was a public meeting or not, but I think the point is that it's essential. Digital connectivity is essential to us as businesses, and actually it's kind of essential to everybody these days. And Cambridgeshire and Peterborough has been at the forefront, really, to some extent. And the new strategy is about trying to maintain our position as the rest of the country catches up with us, really.
Goodness, there's quite a lot to encapsulate there. Thank you both. I know there's been an awful lot of communication and support around a number of these different transport themes. I will come to for a response from either Anna or Nick, who I see has joined us. Mayor Dr. Nick, good to see you with your comments around all of the positive activity on buses and transport that's been undertaken. I think your point about interaction with the growth company and broader transport alignment is definitely one I'd like to ask officers if we could schedule for an upcoming or a future business board meeting so we can unpick that one in more detail. And absolutely take your point on that one, Andy. But Anna or Nick, Andy was just articulating that the expanse and extent of work that's been done when it comes to access to buses for different stakeholders across the region.
If I just take a lead with regard, and thank you for that feedback, it seemed to sum up, but just in the point that Andy made about the reassurance of the Cambridge Development Group, obviously for those who keep an eye on these things, they'll have noticed that at the end of last week, there's an announcement from Homes England in regard to Peter Freeman standing down from his chair's role, with allowing him to then focus wholeheartedly on the Cambridge Development Group, acknowledging obviously where he's come from, particularly his work that he's previously done around King's Cross. I think within the week, maybe at the end of this week, we're having our first group where we're with a sort of advisory board. That's the elected leaders, myself, County Council, City Council, South Cambs, working alongside the team, which is the Cambridge Development Group. I mean, they've been given that £10 million in the budget, which I think has fortified their sense of let's get on with it now. And obviously that means that as a group, no doubt they will be employing more people. We are very keen to avoid them repeating stuff that's been done in authority areas already, be it the City Council, be it the County Council. So there's a big push and alignment of all officers to make sure that what has been asked of us by central government to come together, and as I said to Andy in the meeting, you know, it would be foolish not to be working closely. This was sort of drawn out of us earlier than the change of government with what Michael Gove's ambitions were, and at the time we had to sort of sometimes bite our lip a little bit in terms of it felt it was very top down. But to the credit of Peter Freeman and his team, they conducted themselves very professionally at the time and allowed us to present that sense of elected members working together. So the voice of the Combined Authority, and as I say, the voice of the business board of the Combined Authority, I believe will be well represented in that particular piece of work, which there is, the only thing I would say, just for reassurance, is that it is tempting to think it's called the Cambridge Delivery Group, therefore it's just about Cambridge. I want to make it very clear, and I always do, that I'm sitting there as a mayor for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and the ecosystem and the ambitions for the Cambridge Development Group have so many sort of cross relations and outward expansion into geographical areas and the businesses that work across the area, and that is something I would take great pride in doing. I would expect the same of Lucy Nessinger in terms of the leadership of the County Council, and I just wanted to offer that reassurance. On that, stop me talking too much. I'm going to let Anna, as the lead member for transport, to just feedback a little bit more with regard to that area.
And I think the easiest thing to say is that I'm very happy to take questions. I think Andy summed it up brilliantly, actually, and covered all the main points that we've been looking at. I would want to absolutely reinforce our bus team are small, but seem to be everywhere at once and doing so much. And that commitment to ensuring that we have better quality and more joined up transport across our whole region, I think is incredibly impressive, and I'd want to pay public tribute to them. The only other thing I would say is that the consultation on franchising closes, I think, on the 20th of November. That's coming up very soon now. So I would want to encourage anyone who is able to complete that, who has not done so, to fill it in. I think it's really important that when Nick comes to make his decision, he's informed by as many voices as possible on that. But I'm very happy to take any questions, Al, if there's anything that people would like to ask.
Thank you, Anna and Nick. Are there any questions on that topic? I think we've had very full and detailed summaries from all of the different thematic committee representatives at this stage. No, okay. Well, obviously, if anything does raise or you still have an opportunity to feed back in, as Anna said, then obviously that's now on the radar as a reminder for everybody. On that basis, I'm going to move to agenda item 7, which is our CPCA Director's Update, and Richard Kenny, Executive Director for Economy and Growth, is going to provide us with his usual update. Richard, good to see you, sir.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I'll try and keep this quite high level and brief. And some of the things that I wanted to mention have already been touched on. But firstly, just to mention our local growth plan, we're making extremely good progress nationally with government. People will be aware that the National Industrial Strategy Green Paper has gone out for consultation, and responses to that are required by the 22nd of November. So I think if organisations on this call are responding to that, then it would be really useful to see those responses in advance, in draft, if possible, so that we can understand where the different organisations are coming from, to make sure that we have alignment, you know, so that we are, you know, as joined up as we can be in terms of feeding into that consultation process. The second thing to mention is the Growth Mission Board of Government. If you remember, we've now got mission-led government. The Growth Mission Board, which is made up of a number of secretaries of state, will meet in December. And it's going to be important that all of the feed-in from the combined authorities will go into that Growth Mission Board conversation at a very high level in government. So the things that we've been working on in terms of our local growth plan that I've shared with you previously will be feeding into that process. We've slightly repositioned our local growth plan position. We've still got 3 major sectoral priorities and 2 binding constraints. We've done that really just to align ourselves a little bit better with the 8 sectors that were identified nationally as being significant. So we are now focusing very heavily on innovation. So key is our science and technology innovation cluster, which also includes within it references to agri-tech, clean energy and green tech, and obviously life sciences. And also we are promoting advanced manufacturing and materials and digital technologies and defence. So we've slightly repositioned in light of things that have come out of our joint workshops with MHCLG and the National Industrial Strategy team as to the sorts of things that they're seeing as important with us. And we're now in that process of trying to work through what are the really important subsectors of those sectors in terms of focusing in a very granular level on where the actual economic growth is going to come from. And I think, again, we're really well placed in terms of having real strong expertise, strong assets and strong partners in some of those subsectors. So I think we're in a really good place. The second point probably to mention is that around our infrastructure gaps, we've slightly repositioned those to reflect a little bit of rethinking around trying to be a bit more specific as to exactly what are the interventions that are required to lift these barriers to growth. So we're now positioning along the lines of inadequate utilities, because we think that's quite a good way to bring in the issues around water scarcity, the issues around energy, and the issues perhaps around digital, although we've heard some very good news already in this call about how well we're doing in terms of digital. So I think there's still issues around speed, and I think there's still issues around coverage. So I think we'll be primarily focusing in on water scarcity issues, both in the short and the long term, but also energy and power, which is preventing developments in Peterborough that I'm very aware of at the moment. So those will be the primary areas of focus, with digital also being included. And then finally, we're raising the issue around skills, which is all about access to talent and access to support workers and skills to support the supply chains that are necessary to enable the clusters to develop and grow. So concentrating very much on issues around housing affordability and issues around transport connectivity. And I think the reason MHCLG have sort of slightly reframed the issues around infrastructure is because they're now embarking upon a consultation process across Whitehall with the other government departments. Because if you think about it, those infrastructure barriers very much relate to the interventions of other government departments, or indeed other non-departmental public bodies like the utilities, or like, you know, Homes England and so on. So really important, I think, that we get the positioning of those things right, and we're in train for doing that. Now, all of this will be shared, still to be shared with the leader strategy meeting, which we're planning to take the latest iteration of all this work to the leader strategy meeting on the 27th of November. And I think we'll share it with chief executives in advance of that. And I think there's a conversation planned for the 21st of November. So that's the position in relation to local growth plan. I just wanted to briefly mention the autumn budget 2024. I'm not going to comment on, you know, the impact on businesses and everything else. I'm sure there's lots of views on this call about some of that. But just to say, the budget was very positive for combined authorities, very much confirming the role of MCAs moving forward and local growth plans. We've mentioned the 10 million that was made available for the Cambridge Growth Company. We've already made some comments into government informally about the working relationships with the growth company and how that works moving forwards, because we don't want to be duplicating. We want to be adding value and in alignment with those issues. And as has been well articulated on this call already, there's a much wider agenda than just Cambridge itself, though Cambridge itself is important too. Ultimately, it still feels like the plan is to move towards a development corporation, and I still think that a mayoral development corporation is probably the direction of travel ultimately for that growth company, because that model has worked very well in other parts of the country. So I think, you know, that's something that, again, we'll be needing to talk about with the leader strategy meeting moving forwards. So we were pleased to see that announcement. Also that's been mentioned is the commitments to East West Rail that also came through in the budget, which I think was recognised as very positive for the area. There was also reaffirmation of our Levelling Up Fund money for regeneration of the Peterborough Station Quarter, which was very positive. There was the continuation of the Wisbech Town deal. And there was also transitional funding made available, even though at a reduced rate, for Shared Prosperity Fund. So the great news there is that cliff edge around Shared Prosperity funding is not now a cliff edge, although it's a reduced amount of money. And we still don't exactly know what that means exactly for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, but we know what the position is nationally. So we've got a good sense of what that is probably going to look like moving forwards. And we'll be hoping that announcements made in the spring will help us to bridge some of those gaps as we move forward. The other thing briefly to mention that others on this call will know about in terms of skills was the Get Britain Working package, 240 million announced for Get Britain Working, very much focusing on work skills and health, and particularly dealing with disabled people and the long-term sick, and some trailblazers in that space to be piloted and developed. So I think, again, opportunities for us there in terms of thinking about our work, skills and health plan that will be a requirement for the combined authority moving forwards. And also, I think positive, although we're not in the first tranche of making it into the integrated settlements, but clearly the intention very clear of government moving ahead with the two trailblazer combined authorities for single settlements in the spring, and then a further follow-on tranche after that in 26, 27. So I think the opportunity for us to continue to push to get into that space as we move forwards, but that is not going to be, that's not going to be a blocker to further devolution funding. It's just about the process of actually getting to single settlements. And I think that brings me on, and I'll try to be brief, to Homes England and strategic partnership now being established with Homes England, which is a real precursor to that sort of single settlement work. And the combined authority was very visible at the Homes England symposium last week, where we were promoting to national property developers and investors, working alongside both Cambridge City and Peterborough City councils in terms of pitching some of the opportunities of our patch. So that was really positive. And also, since the last meeting, further announcement about further skills boot camps funding of 2.4 million. And then one last very final thing to mention, the universal support agenda is now being more clarified in terms of the position of DWP, and that's becoming the national supported employment programme. So again, opportunities for us to play into that space as we move forward. And I'll end it there. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Lots covered there. Thank you. I'm going to see if anyone's got any questions. Andy.
Yeah, first on a technical Zoom note, I now see that when you react to raise your hand, it starts with a heart. I thought I was going to send a heart to Richard, which would have been the greatest thing to do at a formal board meeting, but I've managed to find the hand. I guess the thing I noticed, I think I've sent it to you, Richard, is there's a comment in the growth plan. I've seen it also in the SPEAR before, that it's actually said in a negative. If we don't get the infrastructure right, we'll have 125,000 fewer jobs. Now, let's assume we are going to get the infrastructure right. We're suddenly going to be short of 125,000 roles. Now, skills is not my, it's not my expert area. We've got to make sure a good proportion of 125,000 jobs are taken up by our existing community, both through retraining and probably largely through retraining as well, for various reasons. So I'd very much encourage the combined authority and all areas to think about, I don't know what a step change, Charlotte knows more about it. What does a step change look like in training and retraining? Because we're the only area in the country, I suspect, is going to have that many new jobs being required across such a wide region. So it's an exciting opportunity, but plenty to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really a question, but I absolutely, share the point that was made, and Andrea in my team has very much picked up on that already as a major issue for us moving forwards in terms of skills. And we're doing a lot of work at the moment in terms of, you'll be aware of all the sort of data set packages that we've pulled together for all the sectors. We're doing a similar exercise in terms of working through what the sector challenges look like in terms of skills, both in terms of skills gaps, but also skills shortages as well, so as that we're really clear about what are the roles that are really missing in terms of the different levels of skills. And because you're absolutely right, without the skills, then we won't see the expansion and the investment that's required. So it's really important that the skills alignment is really very, very captured and taken forward. So we're very much on it, and that's why we've repositioned almost that fifth priority to be skills, even though there's a big focus also on transport connectivity and affordable housing, because that's also really key to enable people to get to work and people to live in the area as well.
Richard, thank you for that. If I got £1 for every time we had the word skills so far in this meeting, I would be quite a wealthy person at this stage. I'm going to ask you in advance of Charlotte, particularly given her declaration of interest earlier, but with so much focus on skills and obviously the Chamber's role with the LSIP and others, how much are we cross-pollinating and coordinating as a consolidated effort on this, given the importance?
Yeah, so I mean, we supported the original LSIP work, you know, and you know, a lot of you know, we've absolutely done that work jointly with the chambers, and you know, supported where we've been able to support. And I think our first source of real information was to go to the LSIP really and look at that as a starting point for really getting a good sense of where we were in terms of the specific sectors and so on. And I think this is going to become even more important to get down to that more granular level when we get into the subsectors, because it is really the specific niches that sit, you know, life sciences are great and wonderful thing, but really it's, you know, is it biopharma or is it med tech? And you know, the med tech opportunities could sit, you know, outside of Cambridge. That picks up on the point that Nick was making about, you know, this is about Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and what are the opportunities for, you know, diffusing some of this innovation. So I think those are the key things. And I think the sectoral skills analysis will need to be just as granular as the actual sector analysis, so that we really are very niche and specific about what is required. And, you know, other combined authority areas have been experimenting with T levels in particular, you know, niche shortages that exist in the local patches. And I think we've definitely identified some of those that we could develop some products around that would actually really work alongside some of the skills academies that some of the big employers have got as well.
Thank you, Richard. Charlotte's waiting patiently. Over to you, Charlotte.
It was more sort of a comment around Richard's points, really. And Richard, I'm pleased to hear that the data is useful. I know, Andrea, this morning's we've covered off the most recent set where we're going into a lot more granular detail now. So we hope that that's useful for you, but also wider partners. I think also what we've tried to do through an Employment Skills Board and pulling through into the committee absolutely aligns with what you've just said. How do we look at the regional challenges, the sectoral opportunities, and therefore use initiatives that perhaps are there for us to tap into in a more tactical way, especially with things like the Health and Employment Trailblazers. Fenland at the moment has got the 5th largest increase in economic inactivity of all local authorities. So we should really be championing our area to take hold of some of these trailblazers and show what we can do as Team Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
Thank you, Charlotte. Are there any other questions for Nick? Oh, there is. Minty, over to you.
Hello, sorry, I couldn't identify the real hand there. Just to flag in response to Richard's point about responses that might be going in against the Green Paper. So Cambridge University Health Partners are coordinating a response which is life sciences specific and largely focused around the Cambridge cluster, although there are obviously key overlaps with other parts of the region and with other sectors. So just an open invitation to share responses. I know, Richard, your team are already linked in there, so that's brilliant, but aware that there are other responses going in. And I think it's just really important on all of us to make sure that as far as possible, government hear the same messages from all of us. So just an open invitation. Very happy to share our response.
Thank you.
Thanks, Minty. Okay, I don't see any other hands at this stage. Richard, thank you for the update. I know there's lots and lots on the go at the moment, but obviously our only encouragement is please do reach out to stakeholders if there can be any assistance to you from within the business board. But obviously it looks like we're moving forward at pace. Just a reminder, if you're not speaking, just to mute if you wouldn't mind. There's a bit of background noise on at the moment. Thank you. I'm going to move on to agenda item 8, and I'm really pleased to welcome Gemma Little to our meeting today. Gemma's the Economic Development Manager at Cambridge City Council and has joined us to talk through some of their key priorities, which may be of interest to us. You'll be aware we've had other regions that have done similar for us. And Gemma, just to say, as this is a public meeting, just be mindful of any confidential or commercially sensitive information that you're sharing. I'm sure you've already filtered well on that process.
Thank you, Chair. I do have some slides, but I can't share them, so I think I'm relying on George if he's able to share the presentation. You've just changed it.
Changed the settings, so you should.
Oh, lovely. Okay, let me try. Just bear with me. Perfect. Okay. Right. Okay. Can you see? Is that okay?
Yes.
That's visible, Gemma. Thanks.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you all very, very much for inviting me to give you an update. I'm going to cover sort of policy context, priorities, etc., and then try and give you a little sort of edited highlights of some of the projects we're working on, including some of our Shared Prosperity Fund programme, because I appreciate you get updates at a programme level, but I thought you might be interested in some of the detail in terms of the projects that we're delivering. So I'll start off with this. I've got a couple of slides here just sharing the City Council's vision, because some of you on the call will be aware we've had a sort of long-standing commitment really in terms of our council strategy policies around the strapline of One Cambridge Fair for All, which and we have a corporate plan that's committed to delivering that for the next to 2027. But what our councillors did over the summer was actually go back and refresh our vision. So I won't obviously go through all of these in detail, but I wanted to share them with you because I think from an economic development point of view, they really highlight the way that the council wants to work with partners and stakeholders around a vision for Cambridge City. So this isn't just a vision that we have for ourselves as a council, it's one that we think we share with partners, and it's one where the economy plays a key part really in enabling Cambridge to be a successful place. And one of the key things for us is making sure that we continue to have a successful economy, but that also benefits the people that live and work here both now and in the future. I think on this slide, we talk about having a commitment to working with partners, local business and residents to achieve this, which, as you've all said, is absolutely key to the success of us being able to influence government. But in terms of how we can deliver some of our objectives around skills, for example, we can't do this on our own. Even the CPCA doesn't have enough money to address all the skills problems. So it has to be something we work on together as a system. I think employment and skills are incredibly important to us because they are a route to social mobility for local people. Our growing economy is opening up huge opportunities for people, but what we want to do is make sure we work with others to ensure that those job opportunities are accessible to everybody in the city. We also see innovation as being absolutely key, and we recognise that Cambridge and the wider Cambridge economy, the innovation ecosystem that sits around the immediate city, is absolutely key to the national and global economy. And I think we also see as sort of central to the future of the place the role that we can play as a city in leading the decarbonisation agenda and addressing issues around climate change, biodiversity, etc. And we're lucky to have two great universities in the city who are doing leading work in that domain. So it not only hopefully are we a city that's leading the world in terms of medical discoveries, etc., but we can also play a role in addressing climate change alongside that. The other slide is also part of the vision and talks about how we see the importance of development being sustainable and inclusive. So we have planning powers, we have a shared planning service that we share with South Cambridgeshire District Council, and the council works incredibly hard to make sure that what development does come forward is high quality and creates a really great public realm for residents and people that work here. The other priorities we have are around arts, sports and culture, quality of life. If Cambridge is going to continue to be a successful place, these things are incredibly important, both to our economy and to the joy of living here and retaining and attracting good talent. And lastly, accountability, transparency, how we work with each other, further devolution, all incredibly important. So I hope you feel as a business board that we are sort of taking account of growth and the economy in a holistic way that will create a great Cambridge, and that's greater Cambridge, if you like, in the long term. Just to move on quickly, just to say, so when I'm thinking about the work that we do around economic development, that vision translates into some of these priorities, and I think the work we're doing jointly or feeding into the work that Richard's leading on the local growth plan and the national industrial strategy reflect that. So, for example, securing investment, as we've heard today, investment in infrastructure is absolutely key to enabling growth. We want to advocate for the CPCA area, the city, Greater Cambridge, to make sure that the continued growth of Cambridge, which has been one of the fastest growing cities in the UK over the past 20 years, is supported by the right infrastructure. Otherwise, the development won't happen, it will slow down, etc. So the housing, as well as has already been mentioned, affordable housing. The council itself delivers large numbers of affordable homes through its partnership with Hill, and we want to continue to work with the CPCA on securing more investment to help us do more of that. I think I wanted just to highlight our commitment to supporting our innovation ecosystem. That's something that we have put a lot more time and effort into over the last couple of years than perhaps we did, partly through our relationships with Innovate Cambridge, but also through our long-standing relationship with CUHP and Biomedical Campus and other key sectors. So we recognise the key kind of drivers really around remaining globally competitive as an economy in place, and that relates to investments in the city, but in wider infrastructure around the whole of the CPCA area. And I'm not forgetting also local businesses, let's say not in our key sectors, absolutely vital to the successful growth of our city and aligned really to the growth in our knowledge economy. I'll skip over the next points, apart from just to say that in terms of skills and social mobility, as I'm sure most of you know, Cambridge is recognised as having significant inequalities, even though we're overall quite prosperous as a place. So with 12-year life expectancy and very poor educational attainment for young children on free school meals, we have a lot of work to do to address social mobility and ensure that everyone benefits from the good employment opportunities being created. Just to highlight here really a couple of things that were really important that came out of the Innovate Cambridge Summit, which some of you may have attended. The first thing just to highlight is the launch of the Innovate Cambridge narrative around coming up with a sort of proposition to really help us all promote the place, which as a city council will use in certain ways. And I was sitting on a panel sort of talking about how we might use it to raise aspiration locally, but how we might also use it to advocate for investment in Cambridge. But for me, one of the projects close to my heart is the Cambridge Pledge, because I've been working on something called the Greater Cambridge Impact for the last year and a half, which will be coming to the CPCA's investment committee, I hope in December. But what we're creating there is a social investment vehicle, which is designed to create a £10 million fund with a mix of investment from the public sector, but drawing in social impact investors to then actually invest in transformative projects that will address the inequalities we face in the city. We're not saying £10 million is going to solve all of those problems, but we are trying to set up a new type of funding that will really help social innovation projects scale and grow across the Greater Cambridge area and beyond. And the Cambridge Pledge that was launched in October is absolutely critical to the long-term success of that, because that is basically providing a charity that will sit alongside the Greater Cambridge Impact, that will allow successful entrepreneurs and high net worths, etc., that have benefited or will benefit from Cambridge's innovation ecosystem to pledge some of their future profits back into a fund that can address local inequalities. And I think that's an incredibly significant development, and we as a City Council were incredibly proud and grateful for the support we've had from the innovation ecosystem and Innovate Cambridge to launch that. Secondly, in terms of other highlights, I wanted to share with you that we're doing quite a lot of work on culture, markets and our visitor economy. I won't go into detail into all of those things, but just to say this is really important for Cambridge as a place. In the city centre, like in other places, there's been quite a lot of change, move from retail to leisure. Our city centre is still vibrant and successful, but we do need to think about how we curate and support it, and the investments that we can make ourselves to make it a successful place. A couple of things on this. We've launched a cultural strategy, and we're in the process of developing a cultural infrastructure strategy. So the cultural strategy is on our website, but what both of those strategies seek to do is make sure we have the right investment in place to support growth in the city, but also looking at the role that culture can play in our economy and placemaking and social inclusion agendas, etc. This destination management plan is important because we want to and will be working with the CPCA on the development of a local visitor economy partnership on the back of it. So a destination management plan is in draft at the moment. We've developed it with support from the SPF Fund, working closely with the BID and our and South Cambridgeshire District Council. And we want to use this to feed into the LVET work that Jules Yent is leading for the CPCA. Just to also say, we've actually put a lot of some SPF money into supporting our local markets. So we are running a business growth program for our market traders in South Cambs and Cambridge City, which has been really well received. And we've also, you may have seen on our social media posts, we have supported 2 cohorts of young people to try out being a market trader as a route to seeing what it's like to run your own business and launch and interact with customers. And the last cohort we had was a group of students from Cambridge Regional College who came to sort of launch their businesses and yes, to say they're sort of local business students. So it was a really, really valuable exercise for them. And I'll move on because I'm conscious of time, Al. One thing I did want to highlight to you, in case you haven't seen it already, is the City Council is in the process of developing a project called the Cambridge Civic Quarter. Over the summer, we're pitching this as a once-in-a-century opportunity to reimagine the civic centre of Cambridge, because it really is quite a significant project. It involves our Guildhall building, the Cambridge Corn Exchange and the market. And what the team have been working on is to come up with an RIBA Stage 2 concept design for the 3 components, and looking at them together to see how, if we're able to invest in the Guildhall, upgrade the Corn Exchange, bring them both up to net zero, and improve and enhance the market square, the difference that will make in terms of creating a really vibrant city centre in the future. So if you haven't seen the designs, some of the information's on our website, and having carried out the consultation in the summer, we are taking a paper to our committee on November the 21st to and that they'll be making a decision on whether to progress to the detailed design proposals. And if they do, then there'll be further consultation and planning applications, etc. But this is a really exciting and significant project, and one which the CPCA has, I think, committed some funding to as part of the MTFP to support, subject to business case. I don't know how much time I've got, Chair. Am I okay for a few more minutes?
Let's go for the highlights in the next few
minutes.
You're okay,
yeah,
Gemma.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So just to highlight to you some of the projects we're working on in terms of the UK SBS programme. A lot of these projects, I've given the heading community wealth and skills and employment because a lot of these projects are really focused on supporting our communities. And the Focus on Abbey project is a really interesting project, which basically is about supporting local groups to build their skills, capabilities, etc. And one of the projects, for example, is called Parent Power, which when you were talking about how can we get young people to benefit from some of the opportunities on their doorstep, well, Parent Power is looking at how we can work with parents to support their children to look at opportunities for university education, apprenticeships, etc. So that's a really important project and relates to skills and employment. There's another project there supported by the Focus on Abbey, which is piloting a sort of grassroots enterprise approach, which is being delivered by Alia, and that's going out into the local community and talking to local people about their ambitions for enterprise. And there are a number of other projects, but the SPF programme is really proving very valuable in terms of providing local people with opportunities. There's also a project we're doing to support refugees into employment, and we're also looking at how we can work with local business networks to support their members. And last but not least, Region of Learning, which I'm incredibly pleased that we're working with the CPCA team and Alexis's team to integrate digital credentialing into the skills service that we're offering across the CPCA area. And wouldn't want to not do it justice, but climate change and net zero, as I've already mentioned, is an absolute priority for us. Just highlight the pretty colours on this slide, and it's interesting, showing the urgency really of the climate emergency that we face. We're doing as much as we can as a council to address our commissions, but just wanted to flag to this board that we are doing a lot of work with partners. For example, we have a City Leaders Climate Change Group, which you're all very welcome to come to, which we facilitate in partnership with the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. And we're also supporting businesses via our Green Business Impact programme, SPF programme. And last but not least, we're also doing a lot of work on retrofit, both in terms of addressing our own housing stock, but working with the South East Hub on how we can support private householders to retrofit their homes. And we're also commissioning a study at the moment, which with CISL, that's looking at the how we can scale retrofit, including looking at skills that are needed and some of the kind of interventions around finance, etc., that could really help that sector to grow. So I hope that's given you all a flavour of some of the projects we're working on in Cambridge, and I'm sorry for the canter through, but thank you all very, very much indeed.
Gemma, thank you. That's much appreciated. I will pause in a second to see if there are any questions, but I will certainly extend both an offer and a request. If there are any projects or initiatives happening moving forwards, and you've obviously highlighted quite a few, please do, where the opportunity arises, share those through the officers supporting the business board so that members can be aware of that and where appropriate can offer support. I noticed you shared about your new 10 million fund supporting particularly social enterprises, and obviously there is work and funds that the CPCA are doing on that as well. So I'm really keen to make sure there's some understanding about how those two on a Venn diagram perhaps might overlap, and that's maybe one that you can take up with officers subsequently, just to make sure that there's clarity on what those might be. And also your Cambridge Civic Quarter project. Someone may well correct me, but I seem to recall there was a project around the Market Square a few years ago that the CPCA was involved in supporting as a redesign of that market space.
I think there was money put in as part of COVID, so sort of response to COVID a couple of years ago, and I don't know whether you're also thinking of the time when it was included in the medium-term financial plan, and that's still a contribution to the Market Square enhancements still included in that and needs to come back for further investment. But that, I don't know, it's probably one of those, it may be both, Chair.
Well, I mean, I think it's healthy, and obviously it's the heart of that space. So
yeah.
I'm just keen for if there's any clarification or information you can share to business board members. Obviously, we represent the whole region. Some of us have got more local knowledge of different parts of the patch overall, but I think it'd be good if you can share that. I don't see any hands up, so I think the main thing. Nitin has his hand up. I apologise.
Sorry, I couldn't get the hand on there. Just on the market development, just some feedback. I mean, we've been doing that in St. Neots, and maybe the mayor gets the same sort of comments, but it's took a long time, and there's not a lot that tells us what's going on. And I think we should learn from that, because that's something we're doing, trying to do nice. We're getting comments back saying what is going on and how long does it take. So I know the timing of that wasn't great in terms of the period, but I think we just need to be careful that, you know, because not everyone sort of gets involved with what's going on in town and stuff. When you do prominent projects like that take away space and then put things in, it sort of doesn't create a great environment short term. Obviously, when it all comes together, it's great, but it seems like it's been going for ages. Kate's nodding her head because she's not far from that and probably hears the same thing. And I think we just need to learn in terms of communication and maybe the jobs that the contractors do and don't, see them as filling jobs that they only come to when they've got time, because it is taking a long time.
Thanks, Nitin. I think, Jim, were you wanting to respond to that or raise something else?
No, I wasn't going to respond to that. I don't know if Gemma does. What I was going to say, Chair, was to thank Gemma, but also on your very last slide there, Gemma, and I'm conscious that I came into the meeting late, so Emma may have touched upon this if she gave an update on the Environment and Sustainable Communities meeting. But you know, we are a bit, well, two things. We're looking at the moment at proposals to fill that interregnum between the demise of the previous government's housing retrofit programme and the launch of the new government's Warmer Homes programme. So there's potentially a 6-month gap there where we're hopeful we can bridge that gap. And then the second thing was we're about to launch our Climate Opportunity Fund, which will provide funding for climate-related projects, and we're looking to local authority partners to help us with the delivery of that. So just perhaps that's something that can help deliver some of those the ambitions that you set there, Gemma, around your climate change ambitions.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I think that certainly the former of those, in terms of bridging that gap on the Warmer Homes one, is going to be at the Combined Authority Board meeting on Wednesday as one of the proposals from the Investment Board.
Yeah.
I think the point, just to follow on for officers there, as Nitin, is really looking at ambition and investments, but also timescales and how we can actually deliver on impact on those, which I'm sure is something we'd all love to know the secret sauce for, but just being mindful of how we can make sure that these things can move forward with impact. Are there any other questions? No? Okay, in which case, Gemma, thank you for joining us. I do appreciate you coming and sharing your very exciting highlights of some of the ambition in Cambridge, and hope we will see you back at the business board at a future meeting in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, we're going to move on to the second main block of agenda items today. I know we all get very excited when we see finance, delivery and monitoring as a headline. Bruna, this is your moment to shine. And I think our first item is the budget and performance report that you will be walking us through.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry if I don't shine as much as Ali's hoping, but I do my best. So this is our standard report that looks at our performance of activities the CPCA does, that they are linked with the business board activity. So this report that you all have is looking at period ending the September 24. Just to know, going forward, we will always report on a quarterly basis. So you will get the closest report to the end of a quarter, so either June, September, December, or March. So you will not have a strange odd period going forward. Just a little summary before we go in the real details. In September, we got to 5.4 million of the 10.5 that we were expecting, which is roughly exactly where we were expecting to be anyway. The difference is Share Prosperity Fund, and most of it will be received on a year when actually the program will be completed by the end of the year. On the side of the expenditure, as I said, we spend only 28% of our revenue funds. The delays is mostly due to program delivery, again, our friend, the Share Prosperity Funds, and recruitment, especially in the Growth Hubs expansion team and in the sector-specific team. Capital, again, is behind. Surprise, surprise, you will going to be surprised to know that is because of the UK Share Prosperity Funds and the rural part of it as well, that is all capital. And we only spend 16% of the total budget to date. In relation to what happened from the last time we spoke about it compared with this time, to give you some update, the good news is that we receive confirmation from Growth Hub, from DBT, that Growth Hub will continue. So we are getting an extra £298,000 worth of income that it will offset some of our Growth Hub revenue cost to support the team. This is the same amount we had last year, which is very welcome. And this is the biggest by far news for our income during the year, for this quarter. In relation to expenditure, the headlines are not particularly great, I would say. During the quarter, we only spend £200,000. And so that means we are still having, we are 1.5 million lower than budget to date. This is, as I said before, they're related to late recruitment and mostly UK SPF late delivery. Going back to for what is concerned capital, again, we didn't spend much this quarter, only £200,000, since I didn't copy the number I promised. That means we are 2.5 million down compared with budget to date. Again, this is, as is majority of the cost, they are UK SPF cost. This is again is UK SPF cost. With the other things important to note within capitals that is not affecting the year-to-date figures, but the whole life project, the whole budget, the budget for the full year, is that Illumina is now ceased to exist. So the £800,000 that were included within this year budget to be spent on the Illumina process project is going to be returned for future use in other forms that will be agreed for the SAF program. I'm sure Luisa will give you a hint on how we think it will be a good idea to use it going forward. No pushing, not at all. Very, very quickly, as you know, from this current year, we have 2 thematic pots that are available under. There are 4 thematic pot we can access, but 2 that are under budgetary responsibility from Richard teams that are Leveling Up and Strategic Growth Fund. One is of 10 million and the other one is 21 million, and none of them are present have been utilized yet. And to be able to utilize them, we had to go through the single assurance process. That's all. The rest of it are information you have been aware in the past, so nothing new, really. So if you have any questions, so I will try to avoid repeating myself, and hopefully if you have any question, please let me know.
Thanks, Bruna. In most cases, across our revenue and capital, you've identified those underspends are very much linked to UK SPF and will roll forward. Are there any of those that are of concern or significant deviations from previous assumptions at the last meeting?
No, they're not. As I said, we're spending a bit, not as quick as we were originally expected, but there is not a major concern in it. And you mentioned UK SPF, that is, a bigger topic for Steve and the rest of the team to speak with you about it later, because they are more strategic thing to speak about together with financials. So.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from anybody on that first report from Bruna? No, I don't see any hands. So can we move on, Bruna, to the combined authorities, subsidiary companies and equity interests?
Yes, you are really spoiled today. You get 2 reports from me instead of 1. Aren't you lucky? Okay, so this is a report that it was on our action plan for a while, and it will have, and the aim of it was to highlight which one are our subsidiary company and equity investment, and what are the strategy connected with the different one. This paper was originally written by my manager, Janice Gott, and it went to investment committee. So some of you might already know the majority of the content. So we'll keep it as concise as possible. So the report split our investment in like 3 different categories. The first one are investment in subsidiary or organization we have a control. So of course we have the 2 Peterborough Growth Property Fund company that are there to support the creation and the development of the University of Peterborough, and for which I'm sure Jim knows much more than I can ever going to be explained. Then the further subsidiary that is now agreed to be wind down by the end of March 25 is the Cambridge and Peterborough Business Growth Company. This was our growth organization that we used to vehicle the contract with GEG, and it was supporting our growth hubs, growth works, growth hubs, and activities like the career enterprise company activities that was delivered for skills. Other important on joint venture we are part of is the Smart Manufacturing Allowance and the Batteries Labs Limited. Both of them joint ventures to try to support the organization within our patch, and unfortunately both of them are going to be wind down. There isn't really much is going to come back to us, as there wasn't much investment, but we will get whatever is possible back after that is being wound down completely. The last large investment in our portfolio is MedTech Accelerator. This is part of the Health Enterprise East, is managed by the Health Enterprise East, and the income will be shared with us, and CPCA will look at sell the shares in the future when this is at the right time. And other activities slightly different from this. We have 2 funds that are 2 large other investment arrangements that are Illumina and Star Cordon. As I mentioned before, Illumina is now winding down, so the money that are left in it they are going to come back to us, so £800,000. This was it was a way to support the acceleration of the technology within our patch, and he actually did well, he worked well to support the region anyway. And the other one is Star Codon, that is transitioning to Cambridge Innovation Capital on January 25. Apologies. It's always nice to have him around. Give me 1 second.
Bruno, while you're just pausing there, I think Louisa has a question. Louisa, did you want to jump in at this point?
Sorry, here we go. You can see me now. Thank you, Chair. Bruno, I just wanted to, and to the business board, wanted to clarify the position regarding Better Rides. So Better Rides was the Ascendal joint venture, changed its name to Better Rides and has separated itself slightly further from the Whippet coaches and buses piece of work. So they're not actually winding down. What's happened is that the lab space is closing because it hasn't been used within the programme as they thought it would be. There is the opportunity for organisations to use Whippet coaches if they want to, but what they are doing is they are redeveloping their business case to look at how they're going to move forwards. So our investment is still there. They've just closed down the lab space that they had at Fulbourn, I believe it was, but they're still going to continue. And also, just to clarify in terms of Illumina, whilst our partnership with Illumina is ending, we still continue to have upwards of 15 investments that are still held, that we still hold and that we're still managing, that have been part of that Illumina partnership. So whilst we'll no longer be investing alongside Illumina, our current investments will remain in place, and we manage those quite separately to the work that we do with Illumina. Just thought that it would help if I clarified that. Hopefully it did.
Appreciated. That's appreciated. Thank you, Louisa. Can I jump to Mike before I come back to Bruno?
Sure, thank you. Just with the Start Codon transferring their fund over and the Illumina, I just wondered if this is something that is regarded as a success and whether we look to invest in other venture builders or whether this is the end of a strategy.
Thank you, Mike. That's a fair question. I don't know which officer might want to respond on that, or whether that's one to take to a separate conversation.
I think, if I could jump in, I think venture builders, are something we should be doing or really be looking at, because they are a real enabler and they're relatively low cost. I haven't seen any analysis of whether this has been successful, but as someone who does business both in the Middle East and particularly on the West Coast, Start Codon is a known entity. And, my hypothesis that having these sort of things which are very labor intensive, very small checks, can actually really make a difference. And the question is, should we be looking at things outside of Cambridge for it? But I'm in favour that these things really need to be looked at. They are, it takes one success to make a real, big difference to the ecosystem. But really looking outside Cambridge for that is maybe something we should look at doing.
Well, there's Cambridge Future Tech inside Cambridge. They've just raised a $4 million fund.
There's clearly,
sorry.
That's right, Mike. Were you finished on that point, or did you?
Well, just say, were you aware of Cambridge Future Tech, because they're one of the latest ones that are growing on that site?
I think it's not. Well, go to Nick first of all, and then we can perhaps bring those multiple points together.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make the point, and thank you, Louisa, for clarifying that. It's these sorts of conversations that I think are important, be it, what Sam's bringing in there, or kind of highlighting that Mike is about a new fund. That's exactly what a business board with a strategic thing, but also with local knowledge, should be bringing to the business board. Because I think it's important that we should be hearing your voices, and the officers in this call should be hearing that. And if that's what the business board wants to do, then that's what we should be asking the officers to go off and do. So thank you, the board, and thank you, Louisa, for actually highlighting it, because I think it therefore is a two-way conversation.
Thank you, Nick. I think one action point that might be relevant from that, given Sam's comments particularly, is we already have some investments, and the question is, how successful have they been? Well, one obviously is based on sector-specific intelligence and identifying that brand of Start Codon is recognised. But it might be worth coordinating officers with someone like Sam and just reflecting on what we might use as effective measures of impact. Because like all things, if we're looking at forward investment and we're seeing that that's a good accelerator, perhaps our traditional measures of success and impact aren't still appropriate, and we need to find a way to provide that feedback loop back to this board, the investment committee, and others within the combined authority. I'll pause there. I think it's Louisa and then Richard.
Chair Al, yeah, that's a really good point in terms of the fact that we do have a number of investments, but we aren't necessarily the right individuals to understand how impactful they're being, and to pull out those nuances, because it's very different to managing a grant fund, managing an investment fund, and the skills involved are very different. So Sam, I mean, I absolutely would love to spend some time with you to talk about what we've got, what investments we've made, and how we could possibly look at the impact that they've had outside of just, well, have they created a job in Cambridge? What other impacts have they had? And some of them have been, you know, that they're published in renowned sort of publications, and all sorts of things are going on. But it's very difficult for us, because what we've been looking at is that direct, what have they created within the region in terms of job opportunities, apprenticeships, but there will be so much that they are doing, and having somebody on the business board who might be able to assist us in that would be brilliant. So I just thought I'd add that.
Louisa, I'd be very happy to do that. I think what we have to do is
fabulous.
What we actually measure. If we're just measuring, we put a pound in and we get 2 out. Well, you know, there are probably other ways of doing it. What does it lead in terms of, you know, skill? What does it lead in terms of, you know, entrepreneurs spinning out companies? You know, so I think there's a lot of downstream things, and it's, you know, often it's said that South San Francisco's ecosystem worked because of, you know, one set of angels which funded Genentech. So I don't know enough to give you a concrete answer, but I think it needs some debate and discourse as to whether we should be doing these things and what the impacts are. You know, I might be completely wrong, but, you know, from the funds I know, and I'm actually an investor in a couple of funds personally, whenever anything comes from Start Codon, they do take a serious look. But I'd be very happy to, I think it's quite a detailed and nuanced conversation. I'd be very happy to have it, and anyone else who wants to join in, please reach out to me.
Sam, thank you for that. And Louisa, I think that's definitely one to take away, because as we now have our new format investment board, there is a requirement to put some kind of measures in terms of the objectives and intent for projects. And they might be different measures for different types of projects, but it would be good to perhaps chew the fat and see if there are any different ways we want to actually look at impact. Richard, and then Bruna, who we've somewhat hijacked your section, but for the good reason and good debate. So Richard first.
Yeah, no, thanks, Al. I was just going to just supporting what Louisa said and what Sam said. I'd very much welcome being part of those discussions. What I would say is we should be evaluating the impact of these different tools and different options for investment funds. The local growth fund now is over the hill, you know, in terms of our original devolution deal. So the 150 million is now gone, and you know, we've got recycled funds as a result of some of those, you know, decisions that we took previously that are still in play. And my thinking is that we're very close to, you know, we're very close to the spending review, and we're very close to entering into a new phase of development for the combined authority moving forwards. And it would be good to go into that new phase very clear about what sorts of investment funds we might want to position and be part of in terms of taking this work forward. So having that, I think Louise has put herself forward to lead on that evaluation arrangements, so that would be really helpful. And maybe we could bring a report back, you know, to the board in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. And before I jump to Bruno, one bit of hopefully constructive challenge in terms of additionality is there are certain sectors where there is a very well developed and advanced investor and funding ecosystem for particular verticals, which would include this particular space. So there's also the question about how much additional impact we can have versus other verticals or other sectors across the region where there's less of a mature investment ecosystem. So that's just putting a bit of constructive, there's a kind of a which ones are most in need of our support at the same time. Bruna, thank you for your patience. Can I jump back to you?
Yes, so I just first of all just make a comment. Both Illumina and Stark Cordon were meant to be the aim wasn't a financial return anyway, was all based on increasing the growth in the area. So evidently we can work on a much bigger and much more accurate impact things, but the aim, the purpose himself is not going to be a failure if the money don't come back. That wasn't the purpose. The purpose is help the area to grow, and we're always for that. If
just on that point, Bruna, sorry to labour the point. I know we want to move along. There's a reflection point there, though, because I do remember the Stark Code and other funds where much of our measures of impact were about jobs created. And that might have been part of our framework, but I think there's a bit more nuance where we're quite clear here that it's actually the springboard to other economic ventures and opportunities, as well as just being quite linear on that.
Yes, and I think it's the same thing. We actually was the aim and the purpose of many of the investment activity that we did through Growth Work, Growth Core and Growth Works in the first place. So yes, I'll fully agree with you. The only other point that I wanted to make, and then we can move on, is that we are now actually have launched 2 new different work streams in relation to investment, and these are with FCE and ALIA. SCE is focusing mostly, but not only, on organization that to help the impact on net zero. Either by developing new product that allowed us to be more eco-friendly, but also organization that they want to reduce their emission, and with ALIA that is more focused on the third sector. So we are this is our new stage on investment in various areas, very similar to what USLR. These are different market compared to the one traditionally that we could be funded in our area that we'll be supporting. And that's all for my report.
Thank you, Bruna. And just to confirm, we did do a recording last week with FSC and Ian Crichton from ALIA too, which will be something that CPCA will be sharing, hopefully just after Christmas, just to help promote those 2 funds as well. I don't see any hands up at this point, so I'm going to say thank you for your summary and update, Bruna. And we're going to move on to the next item, which is the future brokerage and skills support for business. And Alexis is going to lead on this one, who's our senior program manager.
Thanks, Al. I take it everybody can hear me. I've had some intermittent sound issues. Your face isn't looking too
You're very loud, actually. You're very good.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I will sit back from the screen. So thank you, Al. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Business Board members. I'm Alexis McLeod. I am a Senior Programme Manager within the Combined Authorities Skills team, part of the Economy and Growth Directorate. Just wanted to do a little introduction because I don't often get the pleasure of speaking to all of you. Here today to talk about our skills brokerage service. Feels very timely from some of the conversations we've already had today. Skills brokerage service is one of the enablers of the talent pipelines that we've already talked about the importance of. It is also currently UK SPF funded, so feels very timely. I am going to not make an assumption that everybody does know exactly what we do. So just a little bit about Skills Brokerage Service. We are a skills advisory team. So operationally at our core, Skills Brokerage serves to provide support and advice to businesses seeking to develop or grow their skilled workforce. The service works on principles of impartiality, seeks to provide a platform to engage stakeholders from across the skills ecosystem through a combination of targeted one-to-one support, information sharing, access to free tools, and knowledge, and through a dedicated online portal. So we seek to help businesses and residents to navigate what can be sometimes complex world of skills. The service also provides a skills-specific employer-facing vehicle to deploy current and future services that add value to both employers and employees, such as our current successful internships program and the fantastic Region of Learning project, which is being led on by colleagues at Cambridge City, and Gemma mentioned very, very briefly earlier, but another project that we've been able to kind of hang on the brokerage framework through having that deployable vehicle to access the business community. And looking to the future, a potential launchpad for progressive initiatives such as our Good Work Charter. So very much a operational enabler, and the strategic intent is also to be that connector and enabler that seeks to make the system work. So a little bit of a potted history of the service. Again, for those that perhaps aren't as fully familiar, it was a service that was established in 2021 as part of that former wider business growth service known as GrowthWorks. The skills-specific element was funded through European social funds. When Brexit came along and the end of that service brought the closure of those funds, however, through support from constituent authorities and through SPF, Shared Prosperity Fund, we were able to receive an allocation to continue the work of the service for the 24-25 financial year. And that allocation currently ends on the 31st of March. So with less than 6 months remaining of the current funding model, and with some question over the availability of whether there will be further external funds that will enable the service, this paper has been produced to provide an assurance to members of both the Skills Committee, where this paper has been previously, and to Business Board members as well, that there is a commitment from the CPCA to preserving that local place-based brokerage service as part of the core business support that the Combined Authority provides. So to sum things up, because this is an interim update, understand and acknowledge that there's a little bit of a lack of detail that perhaps some members would have liked to have seen, and will very much kind of assure you that it is our intention to return to committee in the new year with a further and developed service outline and strategy. This paper is intended to provide the assurance that we will continue to offer the service. As Richard mentioned earlier in his director's update, there is some further UK SPF shared prosperity funding that may be available to the area. However, there is an allocation that has been made through Combined Authorities Gain Share Pot and is written into our MTFP that has been approved, which we can utilise from April the 1st and will allow us to bring an autonomy to the service that we think now is needed. So this paper provides a bit of a narrative around and an outline of some of those early perceived benefits that we think would come from evolving the service into a greater autonomy, which lie around our ability to shape a service that can adapt more effectively to economic and policy changes, rather than being directed more directly, more specifically by national funding streams. So we'll have a greater ability to underpin and support local skills strategies rather than driving on national agendas. The paper also provides some details around some of our early thinking around how we might evolve the service, specifically regarding the branding of the service, but also how we might work to flex an alignment to some of the sectoral approaches, which again have been discussed earlier in this meeting, that the combined authorities, other business support functions are championing and developing and very much committed to exploring. We want to see whether there is a greater benefit from our skills team in doing something quite similar to that. So an alignment to those emerging and key local kind of skills-led designed growth. I will finish up by saying that this paper, as alluded to earlier, has already been to Skills and Employment Committee on the 21st. So those who attended that meeting or perhaps watched online will have already received this update. So very much here today asking for the business board to echo the support that was provided by that skills committee, and to, I guess, call upon your support to also develop the service function moving forwards. Very happy to take any questions, thoughts and discussions today, but very much seeking an agreement to supporting this really important piece of activity moving forwards.
Thank you, Alexis. Are there any questions from any business board at this stage? So I might have one, Alexis, which is just you've highlighted that there's going to be a bit more meat on the bone, a bit more detail in the new year. I would hope that would go through the Employment and Skills Board first in terms of getting their feedback and supporting that. And around that, you talked about potentially a rebrand.
Yes.
And I'm always conscious when we go through a journey of constantly rebranding, whether that is actually productive and impactful or just another cost and a detour when we're trying to get employers to have a consistent sense of where to go for support.
And absolutely agreed. So when the service transitioned in-house in January this year, the decision was made to keep the brand, which was Growth Works with Skills, Growth Works with Skills. That is our current branding. That was very much made on exactly the principles that you've talked about, that we wanted to spend, if we had an annual allocation and just 1 year to continue this work, we wanted to make sure that the investment was being made into delivery and not into kind of a vanity rebranding exercise. We know that we are able to continue the service beyond that external funding and bring stability to it from MTFP funds. And I think that the feedback that we've had quite consistently across this year is a lack of visibility of the connection to the combined authority. So we feel like it's probably the right time to do the rebrand now. We've been, for anyone that's actually particularly perceptive, we've been slowly moving some of our branding alignment closer to Growth Hub colleagues over the last 6 months. So a mirroring of imagery, colours, logos and things like that to make that transition more effective and less onerous on teams and also hopefully smoother for the business community. It was something we discussed at length at Skills Committee, and Nick, I'm not sure if you are still on the call, Dr. Johnson, but I know that you'd had some very specific feedback around the need for greater alignment to the combined authority.
I am here, and
sorry.
I absolutely agree.
Oh, okay, there, short and sweet. Thanks, Nick. It is feedback we've had from many different sources, many different places. I think now that there is a longer term commitment that's beyond just the initial 12 months, that we take the opportunity to do it now, to brand a local service that drives on a local strategy rather than a more generalist service that was perhaps driving national strategy.
Thank you for that summary, Alexis. And I suppose the reassurance was that sense of bringing it aligned with what we're doing as CPCA rather than just another reinvent.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that. Unlike the other agenda items, which have just been us noting what's been shared today, in terms of this one here, the recommendation A is just to note, and recommendation B asks support from the board to endorse continuation of service delivery as outlined in the paper, which is really endorsing the support that's already been given by the Employment and Skills Committee. Are there any objections, or can we confirm we are in agreement? I don't see any objections. I see a thumb up remotely from Dr. Nick, so we will take that as a thank you, and thank you for your report, Alexis.
It's appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, let's see if we can move at a little bit of pace for this one. We're now on to the Skills Performance Overview Report, and Andrea, I know, is here with us. Welcome, Andrea, Assistant Director, Employment and Skills, who's going to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Brilliant.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As the Chair has said, my name is Andrea Wood, Assistant Director for Employment and Skills at the CPCA. I'm here just to give you a bit of an overview of this in-year performance review document that was shared at the Employment and Skills Committee on the 21st of October. This is a reflective view of 2023-24 academic year, for want of a better kind of phase, and is a performance report on our directly delivered skills activities and our commissioned skills activities. So it is not a holistic paper of all of the skills activities that we're involved in that wider strategic role that we have around systems leadership, but specifically focuses on skills funded provision. So the report really covers some of the key areas of delivery that I'm sure you've seen before for those members that have seen these papers before. They cover the £12 million odd of the Adult Skills Fund, which was previously known as AEB, the Adult Education Budget. And it also covers Multiply, which was a national numeracy programme to get more adults engaged in maths. It also covers our free courses for jobs, skills boot camps, our careers hubs, and the work that Alexis has just covered off in her paper around the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and GrowthWorks for skills activities as well. And there was also mention in that paper about apprenticeships as well, although we don't directly have funding specifically to grow the number of apprenticeships, but we do definitely do that on our strategic role across the system. So the paper kind of covers some of the kind of emerging figures at the time of printing. I do have an update in relation to the free courses for jobs. In the paper, it cited a potential 12% decrease in the uptake of level 3 provision. And it has slightly improved, but there is still an 8% decrease on the year before in the uptake of level 3 provision. So overall, against the kind of grant value that has been issued by the Department for Education, we're looking at a total kind of spend last academic year of around 66.6%. So I think there's definitely work to be done to drum up a significant increase in the uptake of level 3 provision. One factor that is definitely having a impact on that is the fact that we currently, as a combined authority, will fund 50% of courses that are not approved by national government, because the list that the government will fund through that particular fund is quite small, the list of qualifications that are eligible for funding. So we're looking to see if we can change that threshold moving forward to increase participation. And obviously there's also the fact that level 3 provision normally takes about 2 years to complete. So it's quite a commitment, especially for those who are already in work. And there's such a crossover with apprenticeships in that space as well. So there's some work to do around those key things. Other things just to highlight to you, as Richard said earlier, the paper mentions our £2.8 million investment in skills boot camps, and Wave 5 has just been allocated. Contracts have now been put in place and delivery is imminently about to start commencing. And we have been informed by the Department for Education that they intend to commission Wave 6 boot camps, where we hope to secure a further £3.1 million in skills bootcamp funding that will hopefully support over 950 adults in that space for 25-26. So we can let you know how that goes as soon as we know some more. But I'm happy to take any questions from members or any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate your summary there. I don't see any immediate hands. I'm going to ask one as devil's advocate, because I know from previously in my role with the Employment and Skills Board, there's a constant challenge and reflection on how we can improve. So one of the notes in your report is about the continuous improvement of the adult skills provision and the need for commissioning a performance management review of that process. Is there a timeline in place for that?
There is, so it's happening currently. We've got a quality improvement plan in place, and we will be looking to make specific changes to not only how we commission, but how we operate as a skills team and how we manage contracts moving forward. So I hope to have concluded that whole piece of work by the beginning of the new financial year next year.
And is that something you will be discussing with the Employment and Skills Board in terms of findings and focus around that?
There are specific elements that I will. We've already shared our intention with the board around drafting and publishing a new commissioning strategy for adult skills. And the draft of that strategy will be going to the Skills Employment Committee in January for them to also see.
Thank you. Just say constructive challenge, but I think it's always good to get eyes on sometimes when it's looking for a broader consensus. But thank you. I don't see any other hands up, so I'm going to say thank you for your report. Appreciate you coming and sharing that. And I'm going to move on to. There's no recommendation other than just to note, so I can see there's no other murmurings. So we will take that as noted, and we are going to move on to UK Shared Prosperity Fund and Rural England Prosperity Fund update. And I believe we have Alexa Hamilton, who is going to be presenting on this one.
Hi, Chair. So Alexa's not too well today, so I'm going to be presenting this item. Steve's had to jump off quickly for an appointment, so
okay,
I'll be taking us through this.
You're very welcome anyway, so thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting most of you. For the ones I haven't met, I'm Presh, Economy and Growth Support Officer in the business team. Sorry, I didn't check if April can hear me okay.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome, cheers, thank you. So I'm just updating from the last paper in April 2024. Before I continue, Richard mentioned earlier around the new announcement for Shared Prosperity next year. We've actually, from our conversations with MHCLG, the cliff edge remains for the 3-year funding that we've currently got. So from 31st of March next year, we still have to spend our allocation currently, and we're seeking clarification on the 4th-year funding and what the allocations are and how that's going to be done. So a background to SPF for members who weren't here for the previous update and obviously things. We've got 2 funds. We've got UK SPF and Rural Shared Prosperity Fund. We've got 38 Shared Prosperity projects and 12 rural projects. In March, spend was at 25% on SPF, and that's now increased to 42.5%. On rural, currently spend is at 1.1 million. In our MHCLG report that we submitted to government, we were able to provide a committed spend figure, not necessarily money that we've paid out in claims, but money that had actually been spent from our local authorities. This figure was 4.34 for UK SPF, which is 44% off the budget. And in rural, it was 1.55, which is 48.4% of our overall rural budget. In terms of general monitoring and our management of the program, we're conducting sort of monthly performance meetings to see where any risks are on the projects. We've had 3 project change requests this quarter, which was for Green Business Grant, which is our joint project between Huntingdon District Council, South Cambs and Cambridge, East Pace North, which was a East Cambs project, and Youth Zones, which is a Peterborough project. These 3 changes are more details given in the report itself. But more or less, that money's been reallocated just to make sure that they're in projects that can be spent by 31st of March. Our quarterly monitoring and our monthly monitoring also looks at milestones that the districts have to meet in order to have the next stage of funding be released. We want to be able to move the funding onto a project that can be spent quicker if there's a risk that it might not be spent by 31st of March. And just a small update, since the paper's been published, we've actually received about 200,000 more in UK SPF claims and about 100,000 more in rural claims, which obviously couldn't be reflected in the publishing of the paper. I hope that's a sort of a high level overview, but I'm happy to take any questions as well.
Thank you, Presh. Appreciate that update. Are there any questions? Richard. You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, sorry, there's quite a bit of background noise here. Sorry, thanks, Al. I just wanted to make the point that it's really important moving forwards that the combined authority really demonstrates real robust financial management on delivery. And I think this is something that is coming through our gain share review, that we can't keep rolling things forward. And I think that's so important moving forwards, that we start to both get a grip on what is actually achievable and deliverable, and also scale as much as we can in terms of the interventions themselves. Because I think having multiple projects that are relatively small in scale is not really doing us any favors, I don't think, in terms of the resources that we have to put in terms of getting these things over the line. So I think there's a real intent from within the combined authority to move into that space. And I think that reflects also what I didn't want to imply earlier was not so much that it's important that those projects are spent at the end of the year, and that's why we've done those variations in contract, but the transition funding enables us to actually not fall off the cliff edge in terms that there is actually going to be a year of funding to enable us to move from where we are now to where we want to be. And so there won't be that sort of gap in that funding as we plan going forwards. I think this is going to be really key for single settlement negotiations. If we're credible around our delivery, then we are credible to have a place at the table to negotiate a single settlement, and that's where we want to get to. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. I think that's a really important point to kind of have on the radar in terms of that confidence. I'm just interested. I see Rebecca's got a hand up, but is that a reflection sometimes in terms of how the projects are presented to CPCA and optimism on delivery that needs to be a fresh set of measures or scrutiny at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Alan. I mean, I think it's a real mixed bag of things that are going on. If I'm honest, I think there is a case of a lot of the projects having dependencies that sit outside, and therefore, there's things like match funding, there's things like planning, there's things that need to happen in terms of the master plans around local authorities in terms of town and district centres and so on, so some of the projects are very interdependent with other things, and that creates a complexity in its own right, is my reading of the situation. I think that's very anecdotal, right? That's not based on some sort of analysis or evidence, but I think that is coming through in terms of our legacy, in terms of our gain share review, that there's been perhaps too many small things that are interdependent on too many other variables, and therefore it's not giving us the ability to kind of program and project manage it robustly as we would really like to. So I think that's some lessons learned for us moving forwards as we enter into the next stages of opportunities with the next government.
Thanks, Richard. That's really helpful. Rebecca, apologies, over to you.
I think actually I'm saying very, very similar to Richard. I totally agree with a lot of his points. My kind of original point was around how we're marrying up what we have now spent this money on versus what we intended to spend it on. And the fact that everyone's really busy and everything is really pressured and things have been pushed off, and we're now trying to get the money spent in time. And is that the best thing to do versus what we intended to do? And overlay at the top of that, the amount of resource it's taking us to manage keeping an eye on it all. And Richard is nodding seriously, so I think I'm hitting a bit of a nerve here. But I don't think it's necessarily, there's no finger pointing here. It's just, it feels like we could do it better.
Yeah, I mean, Al, if I can just come back, I mean, I think we when we look at any variation, we look at what's the impact of it, and is it in keeping with the sorts of things that the combined authority would want to see taken further forwards, and most of the variations, I think, do follow that sort of pattern, and we are careful in terms of the way that we handle those variations. We don't just accept variations, so if we're supporting enterprise in a particular area and a variation comes up for some public realm, then we're not going to do that, but it's a fair call, and it's a fair point that you make, and I think it's something that's part of the learning moving forwards in terms of making sure that we don't get ourselves into these predicaments into the future. But if it's any, it's not really that relevant. But I think other combined authorities and other organisations dealing with shared prosperity funding are in similar positions. I don't think we're unique in this at all. I think it's replicated in other parts of the country. And I think to some extent, it's the nature of the way in which government itself has distributed funding. It's been very short term. It's been very sort of competitive bidding. It's been very kind of siloed in the past. And I think that's made things more difficult. So when we've been waiting for funding to come out, so there's an announcement made, and then there's a big gap before government actually, transfers the funding through, and therefore we're then wrestling to get these things over the line in what are, ridiculously tight timelines. So I don't think it lies all with us at all, but I do think that moving forwards, we need to move to bigger interventions and think about, the programme and project management much more rigorously around delivery.
Thanks, Richard. I think you're clearly in alignment on that topic, and I appreciate your insights on that one. Louisa, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just wanted to add that we're in a very different place as a combined authority now to where we were 3 years ago, nearly, when the UK Shared Prosperity and the Rural Prosperity Fund came out from central government. And we've done a piece we've done a piece around lessons learned on the UK SPF and how it was rolled out by the combined authority. And I think it's useful to sort of refer back to that sometimes and say, we have moved and we are in a very different place. And we would not now be delivering UK SPF if it came out the way it is currently being delivered. It would be much more consolidated. It would be much more focused. And we would be taking into account the officer time that is extolled on this programme, bearing in mind central government only allocated 4% of the SPF to administering it. It was already unrealistic at the beginning, and there was zero administration support for any of the rural funds. So we were already on the back foot when they issued the funds, and it would be very different, I think, today with the processes and sort of the governance arrangements that we have and the different relationships that we have with our region, with our partner authorities. It's a different space we're in now, and I think it would be very different. But we are where we are, and we are significantly resourcing this programme of work, and it takes up an awful lot of officer time driving it forwards and ensuring that payments and delivery is on target.
Thank you, Louisa. I think the comments are noted, and we're in a different place, but I think it's kind of healthy that there are lessons learned, and we obviously want to make sure where possible we can refine those into future decisions. But hopefully that's reassuring. But I think that's one that will be a conversation to be had back at this group over the next 12 months, and I'm sure beyond that point. I'm conscious of time, so given that you've just been sharing with us, I'm going to move on to agenda item 14 for the home straight, which is the economy and growth. I'm just going to confirm we were just noting that last one again, so there was no vote taken. There's no objections that I saw. So we're talking about the business economy and growth concept papers and business cases that you've shared already, Louisa.
Yes. So, thank you, Chair. I am not going to go through the paper in sort of verbatim. What I'm looking for from the business board is sort of constructive feedback on the concept paper itself, which is the Strategic Investment and Innovation Fund that we're proposing, which is you will utilise the Strategic Growth Fund and the Rural Levelling Up Fund that are within the MTFP this year. Currently, until Wednesday, those funds stand at 21 million and 10 million. Come Wednesday, there potentially will be a decision at CA board that will remove 5 million from that pot to go towards some of the work around the capital work that Place and Connectivity have for bus work, for bus depot and infrastructure development. So the funds will reduce to 26 million from 30 million. And what I would really appreciate on that particular concept paper is feedback from the business board members in terms of how we've structured that at the moment, because it's all, you know, it is a concept paper. At business case, you know, when it goes to full business case or outline business case, then full business case, there'll be changes made. So I want to make sure that we are really building in the voice of the business community. So knowing that we don't have a lot of time here, I am happy to take offline comments from the business board on the concept paper itself. I know that we have one comment from Minty, which was around the fact that the fund currently is focused with a private sector lead, and Minty would like to discuss or have discussion around whether that should be broadened out to include universities, etc. I think some of that we want private sector lead was we took that from our gateway review on gain share delivery and how with the private sector leading we have had much more success in delivery of major projects. They deliver quicker. And there are far fewer issues. But we're open to the challenge from the business board that, you know, no, you do need to be including local authorities, you do need to be including the universities, you know, we will miss out on various opportunities if we don't include those. But I'd like to take, I think it's helpful if we take it, I'm happy to take that offline rather than everybody pile in a big discussion here and sort of extend everybody's evening further. If you're okay with that, Al, I'm okay with that. And I'm happy to then do an email feedback loop so everybody knows what those discussions have been, just to make sure that everybody has that circle.
I'm certainly the offer there is for anyone who wants to feed out to you, and certainly any amendments or revisions, given this as a concept paper, would be good to feedback. Obviously, this format has been adopted from a few of the different projects that have gone through the investment board as concept papers and for feedback. The one that stood out for me and has been the case on other papers, and I think it's more about linked to an earlier conversation when it came to some of the other innovator hubs, was just the benefit or value of what we put as our indicators of benefits impact. There's kind of sometimes diplomatically a lack of credibility in some of the, it will likely create this many jobs or this many bits, because the reality is we are very much finger in the air. And I think on some of these projects, that's not the sole driver anyway. We're looking about the additionality that it can have. So
Yeah.
just a suggestion, and I'm sure others will have far better words of wisdom, but maybe we need to just be looking to signpost what we're really trying to achieve by this rather than what we think people want to hear from this.
Yeah, absolutely. And happy to take on board any of those, and obviously there'll be following the investment panel, there'll be further comments made to the concept paper. But what the concept paper does do is it hopefully gives us a really good basis upon which to build our outline business case. So any comments sort of at this point will be more than welcome. Also included in the paper is the investment fund that Gemma was talking about. That's now at full business case and goes to investment panel this week, and then goes to investment committee in December. There's been various comments made to their concept paper, which sort of fed into this business case. But I am sure that anything that you might, any queries that you have, any comments that you may have, Gemma is open to looking at those and ensuring that, you know, the best possible business case is submitted to the investment committee.
Thank you, Louisa.
So and I'll also take those offline as well, just to sort of for ease of time. The final one is not a concept paper, it's a pre-concept discussion that I wanted to bring to the business board. We were approached 2.5 weeks ago, pretty last minute, to be part of an Innovate bid that was being put in by Essex University in partnership with Suffolk University, around R&D support for companies, for small SMEs who would never normally use R&D to develop their work. They piloted it in Suffolk fairly successfully, and are looking at rolling it out. Now, their approach to us came 2 weeks before they had to submit the expression of interest. We obviously have various routes we have to go through to get sign off for these types of partnerships. So myself and David Moore spent a week of can we, can't we, do we, don't we? And the decision that myself and David came to was, no, we don't sign up to it yet. We bring it to the business board. We ask you to consider, is it something that you think we should be party to? And we've asked that in the expression of interest that they have now submitted to Innovate, that they include the opportunity for additional partners to come on board at a later date, which enables us to have that open door, but doesn't tie us into being part of it. And it also meant that we could get a lot more information for everybody before a decision was made. So what we have said is, once their expression of interest has been approved by Innovate, we will then bring a more detailed paper to the business board. We'll take it through to CMT. We'll take it through the various boards, committees that it needs to go through within the CA to ensure that there's real sign up to it and we know what we're getting, and that we're not just being pulled on board because actually we're seen as quite an attractive region to have within that partnership, that actually it's a meaningful partnership that we develop. So that's a heads up potentially for a concept paper in the future once their expression of interest has been approved, if it's approved at Innovate. But it seemed to be a really, really interesting piece of work around bringing R&D and utilising what we've now got within Peterborough at ARU and in Cambridge ARU. So it was utilising sort of ARU sites, not just the university sites, which can be intimidating for small SMEs, you know. So it's about bringing on those organisations who would never even consider R&D, and extolling the virtues of it, and showing how it can encourage growth within their businesses. So those are my 3 papers. What I would like is feedback on the concept paper and the business case. Happy to take that via email. It goes to investment. They go to investment committee this week on, I think it's Thursday. Is it Thursday? I'm looking at Steve. He can't see I'm looking at him, but I'm looking at him. I'm channeling my inner.
Hello.
Is it the investment committee on Thursday?
So sorry. Hello. Yes, I was offline for a bit, but I'm back.
Fine.
The investment panel is Thursday.
Yes.
The investment committee, I think, is not until into December.
Yeah. So if I could have comment, very short notice, I know, but anything is appreciated, and we can take it post the panel. But if there's anything that you really want us to look at prior to the panel, then do let me know. And Al, I have made note, certainly made note around those benefits, and not just sticking to the traditional ones that we think people want us to give.
Yeah. I also, just a final one, I'll jump to David. I think it's really helpful on some of these proposals moving forward, if we can actually signpost which of our strategies these actually align with, so that we can just cross-reference, because we have lots of our strategies and policies and shared ambitions, but we don't always cross-reference. David, over to you. I think there's one hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to echo and support what Louise has just said around, if you like, deferring the opportunity to get involved. I was conscious that whilst ARU had joined, they joined late into the bid process, and the timescale we had really wasn't sufficient for us to consult and to evaluate it as a scheme. I'm sure it's brilliant, but there's lots of other stuff going on, and I just wanted to be sure that the business board and our governance process was followed. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I think that makes perfect sense given the number of different plates spinning. We want to make sure we focus on what will give us the maximum impact. Okay, again, this is just a recommendation to note, but obviously a reminder for anybody who has any particular thoughts or areas which could help refine or improve, please do feed them back to Louisa as soon as possible. And on that note, we are on item 15, which is the date of the next meeting, which is on Monday, the 20th of January. Officers have reminded me that technically I should now be sharing season's greetings with you all, but it's early November, so I will not be doing that. And I'm sure we will meet up in some shape or form long before we get to the Christmas break. But again, a big thanks to George and to Dom for their support. And I think at that point there, I think we conclude